All right, I'm going on one of my walks, and this is just something I do simply because I can. I just like being able to walk these streets where I'm at right now because, typically nobody bothers me. I'm not worried about anybody trying to rob me or some police officer trying to harass me. And, what it comes down to, if I really wanted some trouble, I know where to go to get in some trouble. But I don't want that. And so obviously you hear the noise in the background, the traffic, every footstep. I just don't have time to edit any videos and all that stuff. So all you have is my voice, because it's all about the points I'm about to make. And so the very first thing I want to talk about is that shooting that went on in Columbus, Ohio. That was a tragic. That was sad. And really the only people who should be upset and, grieving for that matter is the family. I feel like the media, everybody, including myself, really, everybody need to kind of give them their space, let them grieve in peace. I kind of don't like hearing about people trying to find out more about, the family business, like kind of what their flaws are, because you have two extremes going on. You got one side trying to vouch for that situation, saying that the cop had murdered that little girl. And then you got the other side. The other side is pretty much saying, hey, hadn't that cop shot that little girl was going to kill the individual she was trying to stab. You can go as far as saying maybe all of the above is true. But, just to speak on that situation, it was obviously sad. It was a sad situation. I hated that, that little girl brought a knife to the fight. When the cop showed up, he was put in a bad position because, he was damned if he did, he was damned if he didn't. Because hadn't he done nothing at all, and that little girl wound up puncturing maybe a lung, had she stabbed her good enough, yeah, that officer would have watched it, and there would have been a different uprising. And that's even if he done nothing, just because he's in uniform. And so you're going to hear a lot about accountability and things like that. I mean, really, you could just throw that out the window because you did have adults out there. Why didn't the adults stop that whole situation? People trying to talk about how the officer should have de-escalated. Well, he only had about 9 seconds to try to convince an individual who already made up her mind that she was going to stab someone. And the video says it all. And again, may she rest in peace. I wish she hadn't taken that action. I wish she hadn't taken it that far. But I gotta put this on the adults, the so-called adults, the so-called responsible adults who should have did something. Policing is not just done by the police. It should not be. People looking at, the role of policing as something that's responsible for law enforcement. That's their job. Okay? And for each officer, that's only their job for 8 hours out of the day. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, this is what kind of kills me about kind of how just our society in general is ran right now. There's a reason why you have, the left, the far left, the far right, and kind of the politics they try to put out there. One side wanting very small government, very little interference, while yet the other side, I'm just going to say, they want more of the government to be involved. Well, this is the big picture. Between being in law enforcement and in education, they have actually, to me, literally taken a role of what the parents should be taking. You know, they're kind of the fallout people. So basically, all the teachers, they're playing a role of the mothers of all our children, while the police officers are taking a role of that disciplinary dad. That's what this turned into. It's like the teachers and the police officers are more responsible for these young men and women than the parents are. And that situation, like a lot of other ones, I'm only talking about this shooting in Columbus because this is what everybody's talking about. This is what everybody's tripping about. And, you know, and again, it is unfortunate, you know. I'm just hoping that, you know, people look at it for what it is. You know, leave them people alone. You know, I don't want to judge that little girl who lost her life. You know, but at the same time, you know, looking at it from the officer's perspective, you know, there was pretty much 2 felonies that was going on at the same time. 2 felonies. You had a little girl with the knife, and we already know the outcome of that. But nobody's talking about the other felony. You had a grown man kicking the little girl in the head. Kicked the head like it was a football. That should have never happened. And the same person who kicked that little girl should have been the one to stop all this from happening. It should have just taken him alone. It should have taken him alone. And I know, you know, I was just saying to kind of chill out about, you know, talking about them folks like that, but, you know, I'm going to be the one to be real about it. I gotta say it the way it got to be said. You know, her blood is on that guy's hands. He should have been man enough to step up and stop all that from happening, and he didn't do it. And since he want to start kicking on little girls like that, when he do that, he need to do that to a real man. See how far you go with it. He need to do that to a real man, but I don't think he would. I seriously doubt it. That's just how I feel about it. I don't think he know it can't happen. And that's that same fool who's running his mouth to the police officer after, you know, he wound up, you know, pulling the trigger. Had he handled his business, none of that would have happened. None of that would have happened. Now, I've only seen 2 adults in that video myself. There may have been more adults, I'm not sure. But all it took was just that one. I'm not going to hear anything about, well, I couldn't stop him because somebody had a knife and all that. I mean, that would make it even more ridiculous. And so a lot of these situations like that one could have been handled. If everybody policed themselves like they should, a lot of these incidents won't even take place. You know, policing is just not just by the police. The act of policing is really by everybody.